Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our new day and new episode of 7th Lord in the 6th House. And what happens when the planet that controls your 7th house is sitting in the 6th house? And obviously, if you do not know where your 6th Lord is placed, where your 7th Lord is placed in your horoscope, and what 7th Lord really is, for that, check out the links here and check out my full astrological report, including all my books, Astrology, Conjunction, and Aspects at the Speed of Light. So, 7th house. What is 7th house? 7th house represents mainly, many houses have many significance. 7th house literally means marriage, literally means legal partnerships, marriage, spouse, the opposite sex, the people that you meet in your life to create union. It also represents business partnership in a way, because business partnership with anyone is a legal marriage in a way, because you're both are equally part of this corporation. So, it represents legal partnerships. Courthouses are seen from this 7th house, and at the same time, 7th house is a house of business and trade, because you don't do business and trade with family. Okay, you don't do it with siblings, because both your money will not last for too long if you keep buying and selling things to each other. You got to go out and find new customers. You got to have strange people come to you to buy your product. That's why 7th house is a house of business and trade, because 7th house represents everybody. Doesn't matter who it is. People who hate you, love you, adore you, despise you. Everything is fair game in the 7th house. Now, that planet that controls this house in your horoscope is sitting in the 6th house. What is 6th house? 6th house is the Artha house. It's a house of work, everyday routine, small animals, competition, diseases and health, and diet. It's a house of conflicts. It's a house of, your enemies and obstacles. And so when this planet goes into this house, usually many people will say, or still say, that, if 7th Lord is in the 6th house, you're going to have a divorce, because you're going to have conflicts in your marriage. You're going to have, a lot of fights in your marriage. You're going to have, your spouse will pretty much become your enemy. Your spouse will, try to defeat you in everything that you do. That may be true, but that's not all the time. And this is, again, I speak from experience, that 7th Lord in the 6th house, yes, it does create conflicts. But what it really means, 7th Lord in the 6th house, is that you want your spouse to have a routine. And you want your spouse to perhaps work in the same kind of field that you do. And usually I've seen married lawyers with this over and over again. People who are doctors will marry a doctor. People who are lawyers will marry a lawyer. And this is why I've seen this, because why? Because 7th house is courts, 6th house is dispute and legal disputes and divorces. Who are dealing with these things? A lawyer. 7th house is other people that you meet, strange people. 6th house is health and diseases. Who meets strange people regarding diseases? A doctor. And this is why I'm able to say that I have seen doctor couples and lawyer couples who have been married for decades, that are happy with each other, because of the fact the person who had this alignment in their horoscope found a spouse who kind of in the same routine as they are. And at the same time, these people had animals. They loved animals, because 6th house is a house of small animals. So you want to find a spouse who has love for animals, who cares for animals, or you will look for a spouse who does not want animals, who hates animals. So you both can be in the same page. Because you run into some people that love animals, that don't love animals. Both can be seen from this. One has this hate for animals and having dogs or cats in their house. The other has this love for having animals in their house, dogs, cats, whoever. So that routine becomes that, related to marriage. It also shows that you want your spouse to be very competitive. You want your spouse to go out there and fight. You want a fighter as a spouse. You don't want somebody just staying in a hole and doing their thing. You want somebody to go out and fight and be competitive. So you look for a competitive spouse. Now, of course, certain planets in certain signs with certain aspect will create a dispute, because naturally sixth house is a house of disputes, enemies. If seventh lord is not, happy in the sixth house, of course, the spouse may become your enemy. But if seventh lord in the sixth house is happy, then your spouse will not become your enemy. Your spouse will destroy your enemy. So that's how you need to start looking at these things as. And obviously, sixth house represents debt. It shows that on behalf of the spouse, you take on debts. Perhaps your spouse got sick, because sixth house is a house of diseases and sickness, and you had to take on loans. You had medical bills upon you. You went to a hospital emergency room. You had to give like 3,000, 4,000, all the way to 300,000 for some surgery. And now you, as a co-owner of this thing called marriage, owes this debt to the hospital. So you get into debt on behalf of the spouse. And because in Vedic astrology it's a Dushtana house, it does have its negative ramifications. But that has to be judged on a very fine line. And it's not just this one position that can damage or make the marriage happen. Its other factors have to be seen. Namansha chart has to be seen. Saptamsha chart has to be seen for this. But depending upon what planet controls your seventh house sitting in the sixth house, let's discuss that. Let's say if Sun controls your seventh house and Sun goes into the sixth house. What this shows is that you want a father figure like spouse who will emotionally nurture you, emotionally become part of your routine, and help you be better at maintaining your routine. You want somebody to take charge of dealing with your enemies, to take charge of dealing with what you do at work, and at the same time you want them to be emotionally connected with you and your animals. Now, Sun represents, egos, and it represents your self-esteem. And it shows that your self-esteem in this life will come when you marry somebody who will emotionally nurture you in this life. And you have this emotional connection to, instead of meeting other people, you have this emotional connection to animals. And let's say Moon controls the seventh house, Moon goes into the third house. Shows you want your spouse and your spouse to be emotionally connected, communicative with you. You want your spouse to kind of know how to wheel and deal with things. You want your spouse to have a very communicative, repetitive pattern. You don't want them to start talking about things that you're not used to. You want them to talk about things that you can easily grasp, that you can easily understand. And this shows that your spouse, can be not only this mother type figure who kind of helps you emotionally dealing with your obstacles and enemies, but it's a spouse that helps you elevate your communicative ability. May also help you communicate about, health. May help you communicate about, diseases to other people. Because remember, 7th house is not just marriage, it's other people. Gemini is communication, Moon is emotion. And because it's your spouse, husband or wife, they're helping you emotionally connect with other people and communicate with other people. Let's say Mercury controls the 7th house. Mercury goes into the 6th house. It shows that you want this complete connection, communicative connection with your spouse. Because Mercury actually is a ruler of Gemini. Mercury itself is a communication, speech, business, trade. You want a business-like spouse whose everyday routine is all about wheeling and dealing and solving people's conflicts. And Mercury loves solving people's conflicts. But at the same time, Mercury can actually be very verbal here. Yes, there could be some arguments here because Mercury wants to express itself communicatively with you. And the way it does it, either it's in a very regular environment, it's in an environment where you both are, playing with animals. But when you go out of your element or your spouse goes out of their element, and that's when the communication mishaps kind of happens. So it's kind of like a delicate line that Mercury walks in with this. Let's say Venus controls the 7th house, Venus goes into the 6th house, shows that you're going to get a spouse who is going to be far more realistic regarding love, romance, and, your married life than you would have imagined. You actually want a spouse who will just go out there, do their everyday work, be realistic, be very, detail oriented, and, not worry about the love and romance as much, but as much as about the routine of maintaining a marriage. Now, with Venus though, Venus is a soft planet. And in the 6th house, the house of competition, Venus is kind of like feels, it's like putting in an artist in a war zone. Instead of a painting, you're going to give an artist or a paintbrush, you're going to hand him a gun that you're going to have to fight now. So the artist will get confused. He will like, I haven't fought. I may lose this battle. So this is where, Venus can give friction in marriage. Friction with women in general. Friction with, females that you have business with. Or your women or your clients, your everyday routine will be dealing with troubled women, whether women wanting divorce, domestic violence, abused women, whatever, or you're dealing with animals that are of female gender. Same thing can happen with sun and moon. Like you may be dealing with mothers who are in conflicts or fathers who are in conflict. And your everyday routine can involve dealing with these kind of fatherly, motherly type figures. And let's say if Mars controls your 7th house, Mars goes into the 6th house, shows that Mars is what? Mars is fighting, soldier, energy, willpower, stamina, strength, power struggle. Mars can definitely here cause power struggle with your spouse because of the fact your spouse is so macho and manly and out there, no matter man or woman. It's hard for you to keep up with their pace. Now, in certain situation, if Mars is well placed in the 6th house, what Mars will do, he will destroy the enemies for you, because Mars and Saturn do very well in the 6th house because Mars loves competition. 6th house is competition. Your spouse, you will want a spouse who's very competitive, athletic, who can go out there and shatter competition. So you kind of love a spouse who might be a soldier, policeman, fireman, somebody, who's a fighter, boxer. There are women who love boxers. They love fighters. Or your spouse might be a lawyer because Mars is a natural lawyer. Lawyers who? Simple. If you were to think about a lawyer, it's not somebody who went to legal law school. It's somebody who fights for you. Simple. Who fights for you? A soldier, a policeman, a fighter. So a lawyer is a fighter. So your husband goes out as his everyday routine to fight other people and fight the world. And the marriage is is maintained through, being very physically competitive, physically, fit. These could be very health conscious couples. Like you would probably want somebody who would go out on hiking and be very active, and the marriage requires physical activity because guess what? Mars is ruling the 7th house. Mars is activities. And you want your everyday routine to be physically active in marriage. Now, let's say Jupiter controls your 7th house. Jupiter goes into the 6th house. What this shows is that Jupiter, first of all, what? Jupiter, in terms of marriage-related things, Jupiter represents husband for a female. The kind of husband you will marry, not Mars, Jupiter. Because you want somebody to have your children, right? Jupiter is a significator of children. This is why you want that kind of a husband. Jupiter represents gurus, teachers, finance. It's a significator of finance, significator of religion, spirituality. It's a significator of law. So automatically this can show somebody who might be a natural lawyer or a judge. It also shows that your husband might actually be either a drug addict or might be an alcoholic. Jupiter does not mean that you're always going to get that sattvic person just because it rules your 7th house or 8th house or 9th house. It could be anything. You just have to look at the position, the sign that they're placed in. And it shows that your everyday routine will involve spiritual and religious activity. You want a person, whether man or woman, to have a very spiritual, conservative, or religious activities that kind of helps maintain your routine, your spiritual beliefs in this life. You want somebody who is financially active in making decisions in your marriage, because Jupiter is, finance and the significator of finance. Your everyday routine, you want your husband or wife to be involved in children, because Jupiter is a significator of children as well. And your true education in this life, your true intelligence in this life, really may not just comes from going and getting a bachelor's master's degree. It'll actually be street smart, going out and competing with people right there and then learning from it. Learning from being defeated, learning from conflict, learning from dealing with situation of real world. Why? Because 6th house is real world. Because 5th house is education, like your bachelor's degree. Whoever is in college right now at 19, 20, they have no clue what the world is about. All they know is just when they run from high school to college and they're partying. But 6th house comes after the 5th house, and that's where your competitive spirit needs to come out. When you have your degree, now you have to go for a job. You have to go for an interview. So now you're competing with 200 different people in a line for one job. And that's what, it can show. But mainly it shows that you want somebody who will guide you in the real world. You want a Jupiterian type spouse who will guide you when it comes to real world competitiveness and activities. Let's say Saturn controls your 7th house, goes into the 6th house. Now Saturn is a natural malefic, like Mars. But why does it do well in the 6th house? Because 6th house is a house of divorces and disputes. So obviously you can be a judge of people's divorces or disputes, because Saturn is a judge in Vedic astrology. But remember, Saturn is a slow moving planet. Saturn takes its time and in making any kind of a decision. It analyzes, goes for a long time, because it's a further planet from the sun, so its transit is very slow. What this shows is that your marriage will be quite safe. There will be arguments, there will be a bit of a struggle in marriage, but the marriage will prolong, because Saturn suppresses any house that it sits in. In 6th house, it suppresses arguments, disputes, enemies, competition. So what happens is this is becomes a routine and more of a workaholic type of a situation. This is where a person might be married to their work. They're like workaholics. They want a spouse who's old, mature, working, having an everyday routine, and they just want to slowly and gradually build their marriage assets, build everything in their life. But mainly, you want a spouse that is very predictable and mature and just not too, flashy. You want a very subtle spouse. And that's how, these kind of people want to be in such an environment. And there's tremendous love for animals as well, or older people. You and your spouse could be, working in a situation where you're taking care of handicapped people, you're taking care of very older nursing home type of people. Okay? So guys, this is my analysis of 7th Lord in the 6th house. If you're new to my channel, subscribe below. And if you want to know where your 7th Lord is placed and where your other planetary alignments are and your Lord through houses are, for that, check out the links here and check out my books, Astrology Conjunction and Aspects of the Speed of Light, including your full astrological report. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.